Welcome to Under the Fringe. We are your hosts, Andy Yablonsky and Julie Babin, two interior designers with almost 50 years of combined experience. And while we love design, our passion has really become helping the next generation of designers struggle less, earn more, and create more freedom in their lives. We offer a whole host of support options to help you create the structures you need to really thrive and grow. More to come on that at the end of the show.
When we just started to touch on Zone of Genius, which you're uniquely gifted at, would be things that we're excellent at, but also, could share our zone of excellence of doing a floor plan, laying out the rooms. Then there's these higher levels of things that are going to be more specific and more unique that is even above your zone of excellence. I think a lot of people will remain in their zone of excellence, those type of things. But the reason why we're talking about, we've discovered is, and what we just talked about, is those create quantum leaps.
Yes.
Which, if you think about it, like in terms of mathematics, like what is it called when things are
exponential
on a graph, and then there's that's the quantum leap. And so,
Yeah.
Of course, Andy and I, as business owners and awesome creators, we love that. But also from a business standpoint, that's a huge point of leverage that you could leverage yourself and your team and your company. It's,
Yes.
Unlimited point of leverage. And anytime a business has leverage, a very important aspect to business, that is how a business scales and grows
Yes.
and creates a massive profit center potentially. So, and that's all very outside of how designers think. This podcast is designed to break open these other ways that you can, in fact, leverage your creativity. Starving artist, you can take those belief systems to the trash,
throw them
curb
in the bin
and throw it in the burning trash, and you can get rid of. We invite you to get rid of. It's very common to feel that you have no idea what yours is. And I totally get that. And we're going to support you and show you how to do it, like in a general way here today. But also, I want you to understand that know what your thing is. I just want to remind all of us that's not true, because our body knows all. It's just that we are thinking in that way. And so go ahead and start saying to yourself, I do know what my zone of genius is, and just let it be. And maybe you might not have the answer right away, but just trust that you do know, because you do. And I know that it's hard, and it's only hard because it's unfamiliar.
It's also
really break it down today.
Yeah. And I think it's not something that our culture has encouraged, right? So like we were just talking about sort of the industrial complex of the school system and how we come in as baby geniuses knowing everything, and then somehow our culture has shaped out all of these creative, inspirational and inspiring moments, because it doesn't need that kind of person in the corporate world, right? Like the corporate world needs data entry, and I do understand that not everyone is going to be creative in a way that a designer or artist is creative, but I do also believe we all have creativity inside of us within our own zone of genius. And maybe your zone of genius is in mathematics, maybe someone else's zone of genius is in building something in a very technical way. Maybe someone else's zone of genius is writing technical documents. I mean, there are it's literally unlimited, but the way that we are brought up in schools is to all think the same. And so I think that it is
very limiting,
challenging to say, I do have a zone of genius, but shit, I don't know what it is, right? And so one of the things that we were just chatting about before we hopped on was one, that Julie's zone of genius, one of them is actually spot other people's zones of genius. Like she can very clearly understand what someone else's zone of genius is. And I have a very hard time. Like if she asked me what her zone of genius is, other than identifying that, I don't think I'd be able to really articulate that. I could sometimes barely articulate my own. But what we do know about zones of genius is that outside of that zone of excellence, it is the thing where energetically you feel totally tapped in, right? We said that the time passes super fast. Like you may not even realize 4 hours have gone by. So it's not just the thing that you're good at and that you like. It is combining those things with like, I can sit down and start designing something and be done in 10 minutes and it's flawless, right? That's a zone of genius. Or it could be that I spend 6 hours immersed inside of a fabric scheme and I just did the whole house in 6 hours. And this is going to lead into another episode later, but if your zone of genius is those two things, like I did a floor plan in 10 minutes and it's like I couldn't have come up with anything better because it's so good. Or my like I just designed a 10,000 square foot house in 6 hours. You don't get paid. You don't get paid, right, for design that's done in 10 minutes or in 6 hours. And so
unless you do your fees according with all of this in mind.
Yes. So
which is what we've started doing.
Yeah. So this is leading into another whole topic, but I do want to just mention that part of understanding your zone of genius is billing for it correctly, because again, like our why of doing this podcast is creating more time, more money, and more freedom. So that not only are you creating a successful business, you are creating moments with your family, vacations with yourself or your team. Like there's all these pieces that come in. I don't think that we have to work as hard as our ancestors did to earn more money. Like we provide value, and value is what creates money. Like, who's that guy? It's a T. Hart.
Ecker?
Oh my gosh, what's his name? No, is that his name? Harv.
I don't know.
Harv Ecker. T. Hart
Ecker,
something. Says the people that make money are the people that solve problems.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're
solve
a
problems.
person that is a problem,
well, that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
that's a perfect example of not understanding our zone of genius. Even collectively as designers, we already collectively share this own zone of genius, because design is solving every problem, right?
Yep.
Like the problems involved in that thing.
Yes.
Every problem involved in the house or the restaurant or whatever the space is. And we collectively are actually constantly solving problems. I don't know if you guys realize that, but that is a huge gift in the business space. That is what companies do, the good ones.
Yes. And
any great company is doing that.
Yep. So when you have a philosophy of, I get paid to solve problems, and now I can take any business and solve a problem. So design is a problem to be solved, whether it's creating something beautiful that was once ugly, like that's a problem. If it's reorganizing a space to support a lifestyle, that's a problem that just got solved. And then you apply beauty on top of that, a bonus. So that feeds into your zone of genius. Like we are all problem solvers in our own way. We all have a zone of genius that, like, so if somebody came to you, Julie, and said, I'd love to know what my zone of genius is, and you sit down and talk with them and help them identify it, you just solved a problem.
Yep. I've done it many times.
So many times. And I mean, a lot of us see the potential in people, right? Like it's not, I think all of us can sort of look at another person and like, really truly look through a lens and go, oh gosh, I see you're meant for so much more. But not everybody can really say like, I see you're meant for so much more, and you can get there much faster if you do it by living in this zone that you are uniquely suited for.
Yeah, I think my zone of genius is like actually giving them real, tangible business.
Yes. So understanding that your zone of genius isn't, and again, like, it's unique to you. It's like a fingerprint. It's going to have traits that other people have. It'll have other people's zones of excellence. So I think that's why it feels tricky to identify sometimes, because you're like, well, I mean, doesn't every interior designer do it like this? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people might want to do it like that, but there's no right way or wrong way to be a designer. And I think what we are hoping for is not to change the way that you design necessarily, but to make your business run more smoothly and support your zone of genius. And so I just read this quote that I found on Instagram, and it talks about the creating a group. And so it says, no matter how big the group is, when you come together and create and can allow each other to operate in their individual zones of genius, that's where quantum leaps happen. And who said you have to do it all alone? This will also lead to more ease and sustainability for all involved. So when we think of a business and a growing business and a scalable business, doing it all alone isn't even an option. Mm-hmm. And then when you think about allowing each person in the business to function in their zone of genius, that business
be pretty awesome.
Own quantum leap. So it's not just the individuals who are leaping inside of their zone of genius, but the business has this like incredible opportunity to leap as well.
Yeah. I think that, you know, we both, Andy and I, share a lot in common, that we, like, if every interior designer all of a sudden practiced this quantum leap business practice, there would still be more than enough business for everyone to go around. There always is more. It's not one pie that we're all sharing from. And so we're going to always sprinkle that into all of our talks, because we do believe that all of your desires are completely unlimited and whatever you want them to be. And there's no competition. And it also starts to remind me of the blue ocean strategy as well. But take these kind of concepts and change your company dramatically. But the blue ocean strategy is when there's a red ocean, is where all the sharks are competing for the same piece of that's like that same concept. Oh, there's a lot of people believe there's only one pie. And so there's only this many clients, and she has that client and he has that client. And so there's no clients left for me. But that's the red ocean, where all the sharks are competing for the same piece.
Right.
The blue ocean is a clear ocean because nobody else is in that space, because you've created a unique space there. And they sort of call it like, make your competition irrelevant. Like, okay, I don't even have competition now because I've opened up to a blue ocean. I was just in Vegas, and they do, you know, you see all the Cirque du Soleil shows that are there. And Cirque du Soleil is a perfect example of a blue ocean. They looked at the circus industry and they're like, okay, most circuses, pretty much all of them, have live animals. And so they were like, okay, let's flip the circus business model on its head. They took out the animals and they elevated it into a beautiful theater, like nighttime experience. And they added all the AV and music and incredible lighting, and just went all in on just the acrobats. Pretty much most people have seen one at least maybe once in their life, and it's mind-blowing, right?
Well, and I don't know how many millions of dollars they make every year, but it's definitely $1 million industry off of. Yeah, and I mean, now they have these 2 permanent installations, and then they've got the traveling thing going on. Right. But it's still,
so that's a great example of like seeing that. See how unlimited that is for them. There's 3 Cirque du Soleils that are running in Vegas concurrently. Yep. And so that's just a side note, and I just came to me, so we can talk more about that at another time, obviously. But that's
a zone
kind of like this idea of quantum leap. It's like really saying, what do we want to make here? And the first one is going to be understanding yours personally, because you want to be able to teach yourself, like, well, now I know what mine are, and then I'll be able to better understand what my staffs are and hire, or when I'm hiring. And then I can really curate the company the way that I want it to. I know that it's very common to feel like, I don't know what it is. And I don't, and you don't want to stay too much in the I don't know. So we do want to give you some ways of unlocking this.
Yes, absolutely. Which I think that is helpful, because most people know more about what they don't like. It's easier to define that sometimes than what you do like. And so for me, any task that involves data entry, right? Time billing, schedules, getting quotes from people. And I'd also like to point out that this is also work I think anyone could do, right? Like that's a skill that anyone can acquire, is data entry and basic communication. They're going to enjoy it more. They are going, so
they like it.
I think that was, yes. And I think that was the part that we were chatting about. Like a lot of, like, when I'm looking at my business and how to divide up tasks, I personally want to make sure that I am doing more work in my zone of genius and less work in a space that is not my zone of genius. So those are a couple of things I don't enjoy doing. But I asked Maggie, my gal of all trades. Sorry, she's not a girl. She's a grown woman and she's fantastic. My gal of all trades to enter data, and she literally, like, it's like nothing to her. She does it so super fast.
Mm-hmm.
Or she just doesn't have resistance to it. I'm not entirely sure which one, because I don't know that like that's necessarily her zone of genius, but it is a zone of excellence for her.
Yeah.
It is neither for me, right? Like, my data entry is slow. I get distracted easily. I mean, I'm not kidding.
You cannot wait for it to be over.
No, it's like I would rather jab needles into my fingernails.
Squirming, like, is your energy like squirming around? Like, I can't even sit in this chair right now.
You mean, let me just say, I yesterday actually did do a client proposal, and it was for plumbing, and there were like 18 things on there, and I'm not even kidding you. I'm like proud to admit this, because I can clearly say it is not a zone of genius for me. It took me 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
And it would have taken anyone else way less time, because I didn't have anyone else to help me in that moment, and I had promised it to a client, I wanted to keep my promise to the client, and it sucked up most of my day. But I did feel good that I got it to the client, because I want to be in integrity in that regard. So, I mean, I think that, but like, I know that that's not a zone of genius, because I do know that other people can move through that kind of information entry in a much quicker amount of time. And they would do it even probably more accurately than I would. Yeah. So I think that they're like, I can just tell that I shouldn't be doing that, because it's way too much time in my business for something that, again, anyone could do, and they could do it better than me. They would do it faster than me. Whereas my zone of genius lies in a completely different area of my business. And so, to your point, Julie, I am building a team that is supporting all of those facets of the business, so that I have someone who can enter data at a very reasonable rate. Because honestly, if I was paying someone to do what I did yesterday and it took them 5.5 hours, I'd probably be pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know other people can do it faster. So, and I sure as hell don't want to say to myself, like, oh, you spent $1,100 yesterday entering that proposal. Because if I bill out at $200 an hour, guess what, friends? I spent $1,100.
But when you start to identify that something is not sustainable, you want, this being a good example, you want to start moving, solving out of that, because you want prospering business, or else there won't be one.
Well, and let me just be clear. I also would have loved to have more of my Friday back. I had a really rough week, and I was exhausted. So that didn't help with the data entry. But I honestly couldn't say that it would have gone faster, even if I had been more energized, because that task is a low energy task for me.
It's a double negative because not only did you have to do the task, and this is like where the light bulb moment comes on, because you go, oh man, that's a real pain point that she didn't like. And then, the good news is we do know that help is on the way. They just had their schedules. They're still working through that part. But the flip side is now she's on her Friday evening and she doesn't feel that great because she didn't come out of her long week finishing on a super energizing note, and then it affects your evening time and your family time. So it's really a double negative. I mean, if I can't, I'm really trying to motivate you guys here.
I mean, I think that's
something is a drain. There's they have to deal with that person, and then they also it shoots their confidence down. And so you can see that, no longer do this to ourselves. And we're not saying it's all in a manageable one piece at a time, because of course we're managing projects and other things.
Although we also know somebody whose zone of genius it is to implement all the things we tell her in a crack amount of time. You think it'll take somebody 3 months to do something, and our friend Nancy is like, oh, I already did it all in 2 days.
Nancy's got a zone.
That's her zone of genius. She's a super implementer and very exciting to watch. So go at your own pace. But again, if that feels overwhelming to you and it's a drain, there are, as Julie said, ways of getting around that so that it is a more sustainable approach. And for some people like Nancy, it's absolutely a sustainable approach to get it done in a week. Mm-hmm. Or a day, or whatever her timeline is, because she's energized by that momentum, and she can personally leap into that space very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Everyone needs reminding. We've even reminded her of that, and now she's shooting off like a rocket left and right.
Yep.
Because I think it goes back to what we were saying the last time. There's a lot of shame or people are spending a lot of time and energy and money and their lives, and the years are going by in this space of, I don't know what my zone of genius is. And I understand you're not literally using those words, but now you know what it means. And I'm just and I'm going to feel bad about the fact that I'm not good at my invoicing. Somebody do it for me. Successful people in business, they are more than happy, awful at any of these type of things, because I will mess this up. And then people who are, on the lower end of salaries, I think that is a big energy suck right there.
Well, it's not only an energy suck. I also think that women have, we have this term, right? You can have it all. And the implication behind you can have it all is that you have to do it all in order to have it all. And I think that this is a lie. Men have never done it all to have it all. They have always hired out. And somehow women have taken on this extra responsibility of well, I can have it all, but I have to do it all myself and make sure it looks perfect. And because again, this is the lie that we've been told, and to some degree the patriarchy is confining us to, is this idea that if you want to prove yourself in business as a woman, no cracks in the armor, everything has to be beyond perfect. If you're going to apply for that job, you better have all the qualifications listed and then some, versus dudes who walk in and are I think I could do 70% of this and fucking get the job every single time.
And they'd have no shame.
There's no shame.
Women are very sort of helicopter-y, a mom, kind of what's my baby eating? And when's my baby going to sleep? And now I need to burp them. And you're kind of on top of as your natural mode of, of women, you're sort of on top of all the little family needs, and you sort of have to stay on top of it. So I can see how in a lot of ways that transfers over into the workspace. And then you also combine it with this, previously more male dominated.
But I would argue that the skills of being I'll use your term helicoptery, are also what make us incredibly successful at business. Like women are incredible multitaskers. And I mean, really, like our brains are meant to do one thing at a time. But the fact that in the doing of one thing at a time, keeping in mind, this is what women are good at. We keep in mind all of the other things that are going on. Like men are not really great at that, right? Like I think we all know. I mean, I remember my sister years ago, like she and her husband have created an amazing life. They are both doctors and they each work 2 days a week so they could be home with their kids, raising them. And on her 2 days home a week, she is cooking all 3 meals, taking care of children, doing all the laundry. And on her 2 days at work, she comes home. There is no laundry done. There is barely dinner on the table. And there are Legos everywhere. And she's like, I don't understand how.
Not a fair trade-off here.
I get so much done at the home job. And then my husband, because he's not a multitasker, right? And so women are amazing. Like those skills are exactly what translates into us being great at business. And so I think that we're also incredibly hard on ourselves. Like we've been molded and modeled to believe that in order to be successful, we have to be perfect, and perfection is a lie that I'm willing to knock down. And I think that there is beauty in imperfection, like the little tweaks and cracks and all the things that make up, like no human being is perfect, and yet we're all beautiful. And then there's somehow this like awkward translation that if we want to be successful at something, it absolutely has to be perfect. If we want to go after that job that pays more, we have to have all the skills that are listed. Like there just isn't, men do not have the same kind of standard. And so I think that also probably speaks to why there are so many women in this space in particular, interior design, because one, like this is our literal home ground. Two, it's a lot of moving parts, which women are fantastic at managing. And three, we are our own bosses. So I don't have to measure up to anyone else's standard of what's good enough. I decide. But I still think that there's a lot of that like underlying thought and belief that I have to do it all myself, going back to that lone wolf mentality. And we're just asking you to consider, if you want that quantum leap in your business, if you're looking for more time and more freedom, that not doing it all yourself, admitting to yourself first what you're good at and what you're not good at are the keys to unlocking that big leap. And then relaxing, which is really hard for some of us.
It's not a joke. It's very hard for people to relax. I went on that 1 week retreat, and now there's 2 days left of the retreat. And it's almost over.
You couldn't relax into the vacation until you were.
I almost think that female women in America are almost at the greatest disadvantage, because I've worked with like clients who are, South American, and all these other cultures, the women of the house, especially like Latin cultures and, Middle Eastern cultures, and I'm sure, many others, and Indian, I know a lot of Indian families as well. They understand that it takes a village. And so you have the mom of the woman of the house, and she knows that she has to have a live-in housekeeper, a live-in nanny, like all these things that come together. Obviously, maybe the grandparents are around. A lot of these families stay under the same house forever until somebody's married off.
Yep.
Or, or maybe, and a lot of times, even when they're married off, they still stay with the guy's family. But all of these different aspects that woman, that mother is getting support, and she understands, and she knows that she wouldn't, she demands the support. Like it's not just happening by accident. She's it's like a queen. It's actually very much queen energy.
Yeah.
It's very much like I'm running this kingdom, and in order for me to do that, I need, these things in place. Yep. But somewhere in America, that got lost. And so it's almost like that's why we are cautioning all of you in this space, because, I mean, of course, it's not only women, but it's a lot of women. We want them to experience these quantum leaps.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, what I was going to say is that the thrive versus survive happens when we're more fully resourced. And resources can look different for everyone, but ultimately it's support, right? So whether you're, like I was under-resourced this week in terms of sleep. Like I was doing a lot on my own because my team is still coming. And so when my team right now is being trained by a company that I've hired. And so they're getting all their special skills onboarded so that they can step in fully ready to go. So I don't have to do any training at all. So, which is helpful for me right now because I don't have time to train anyone. And it's a disadvantage at the moment because I'm still doing everything on my own unless Maggie is able to step in and help, which she is sometimes, but not all the time. So those resources, right, exactly. Hence the new team. But like the resources for me I'm putting money towards this team because I know that in the end, my resources that are important to me are time. And so if I can flip some of my time onto somebody else who can do it at a very low hourly rate and they feel well compensated and I feel supported, like that's a win-win. And so, and then I can really stay in my zone of genius and focus on my zone of genius and up-level all the companies, which is really what I'm in the process of doing right now. So, so getting back to the zone of genius, so I think the point of leverage, not being in shame, incredibly important. So like letting go of shame and blame, right? Doesn't matter how we got here. The point is awareness. And once we reach that point of awareness, I think allowing ourselves to just move forward instead of being stuck is really the key to moving forward in a successful way, because we can all move forward, but it's really about the timing of the moving forward. Like, are we moving forward in a year? Or are we moving forward in a day? Are we moving forward in an hour or a minute? And that is sort of why mindset is so important. And we'll just keep touching on these topics as we go, but like mindset is, if you stay stuck in that shame, that's your mindset. Your mindset is to like punish yourself until you feel punished enough. And then you can move forward, right? Like that's the key to unlocking the door is like, oh, do I feel punished enough? Versus I am choosing to let go of shame and blame and I'm moving on. And that is a much different energy than making myself feel bad for an undetermined amount of time before I'm allowed to move forward. And again, there's like so much to unpack there, but thought process around are good enough, or we're allowed to, or maybe we're just afraid of shining. Maybe we're afraid of success. And so that fear stops us from taking that quantum leap, because if we take that leap, we're going to be successful. And if we're successful, who would I be without my shame? Who would I be without my blame? Who would I be without my frustration, anger, and stuckness? Well,
and we do want to also add, like, because we can also jump, from this to the next part, but also just remember that if you need more time to get out of your shame, there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, people need therapists. I recommend mindset coaching. Like if there's a whole separate part that we're obviously not able to go in depth on here for you, the work of getting out of shame can be a very in-depth process of like understanding where it came from, really getting out of it, because our thoughts are really powerful. And if you're thinking negatively most of the day, I think you have like 70,000 thoughts per day. And so if you're kind of stuck in a shame loop, the majority of that energy of your thoughts is going to be very negative or very down or not energizing for you. And if you need some extra time to like really understand what's going on there and get out of it, like, please, we recommend, there's so many tools to help you. And I just don't want to skip over that. We're not going to like go into the details of it, but just acknowledge that, because sometimes these Think Positively programs kind of skip over these like deeper rooted things that you have to pull out first. So just, again, don't feel bad about that either.
No, but I think the point is that, so one, what we're talking about is doing the work, right? Like we all have work to do on ourselves. And even when you've been doing years and years and years of work and you've uncovered so many of the layers that have been holding you back, there's always an opportunity to do more. And the flip side of that is you also need to rest. So like we've all been doing a lot, but the work is always there. It doesn't go away. It's a self-paced program. Life is a self-paced program. But I think some people are hungry and ready. And some people are just sort of discovering they're dipping a toe in at the moment. So wherever you are is perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we want to see is progress. And so your progress might start with your deep inner work. It might start with restructuring your business and building a team. It might start with you accepting help one day a week, right? Like there's no right way of going about this. It's just how can you create more time, more freedom, more money? Some of that is really like, what's your business philosophy? How big do you want to grow? These are all questions that I think every business wants to ask itself at some point. And I think some businesses start organically, like you maybe did your own house and suddenly your friend and their cousin and your next door neighbor all want to hire you. And that's amazing. Like, congratulations. You have great sense of style and you've launched a business. But if it wasn't an intentional launch and you find yourself sort of like, here I am, I'm doing a thing and it's really exciting. Most likely there are going to be a lot of pieces of structure that you're going to want to add, and really sit down and create the business plan. Because I think, again, you'll hear us say this throughout the podcast. We're designers and we want you to design a life that you love. And so there are multiple ways of doing that. And we feel like we found a really good path and that will resonate with some of you, and for some of you it won't. And for those of you that it does resonate, we're happy to bring you into our space and create a community where we can support each other and fully understand that this business, it's just really tough to get through all on your lonesome.
You're saying like, even if you just for today, just decide to allow yourself to, a lot of people that actually is maybe a really big deal because maybe you never really allow yourself to rest. And so even just doing that this one time or starting to do it is actually a big deal. And what if that tiny little act of just today or just right now or whatever, just this one Thursday, I allowed myself to rest. What if that one time that you did it all of a sudden starts to unlock this whole other space that you'll start to see yourself and your business in a different place? So don't forget that even the tiniest start, even if it's, and to be perfectly transparent, my transformation of what I've worked on for myself specifically has actually been a series of very small baby steps, and they're not big things. A lot of times change is tiny, and there's nothing wrong with that too. But I think like also the reason for all of this is because if you don't understand where you are at personally, mentally, physically, energetically, all of it, you're going to have a hard time like being intentional with your life and like setting up goals and reaching those goals if you don't really understand, well, this is really where I'm at. Like whether it's not thinking that highly of yourself or constant burnout mode, and positive things too, but you really want to know, where are you at? And so we're just encouraging you to be very conscious of, like, what are my patterns? How do I think? Like, how do I treat myself? How is that translating out into these other areas, obviously within my company? And so the Zone of Genius thing is also to bring like new awareness to, because let's say you're on a map, right? And you're like on a map of the world. A lot of us don't really know like where we are on the map. Like, oh, I'm thinking really negatively all day long. That's where I am on the map. That's a good thing to know, because then you can change it. And if you don't, and I do think it's common to sort of have the I don't know where I'm at syndrome. And again, you do know, it's just easy to push it aside and use the words I don't know. But that's why we want you guys to start with these Zone of Genius exercises, which we sort of touched on, which is like, we sort of were interviewing Andy, and it's like, what are the things that you really don't like doing? Start with what you don't love. I don't love and like go off, like go like rant and like write it down, like unload everything that you don't love doing in the business. You don't have to show this piece of paper to anybody, but get it out on the page, because that also I have found is how I come to see, wow, this is how I'm thinking. Oh, okay. And also, wow, I really don't like these certain things. And wow, I see this pattern with these things that I don't like. Andy was saying, she could already tell. For her, it's this whole category, and me too, this whole category around data entry, which could be time tracking, invoicing, booking schedules, reviewing shop drawings, requesting pricing, setting up the filing system, create, custom, or not custom, but like modifying the new client contract setup. And like all of that just comes from like, we don't like data entry. And then there's all this stuff that's related directly to the business. And then converse. And I think it's easier if you could start with the write out the negative part, because the other part, it seems like it's harder to get to, like the I love part. There's resistance there, I have found with many people. So that's why we're recommending this. And then after you get all that out, like just like vomit all over the page, just negative Nancy it up, whatever you want to do, like every little thing that you really don't like just write it down. It's safe. Yeah. Nobody has to see it. We promise we won't ask you to show us. But and then also, write out what I absolutely love doing. So we were talking with Andy earlier, like she loves reworking the floor plans, because I can see how in her brain it's like a puzzle piece. Like, oh, I'm going to move this over here, and I'm going to move this wall, and I'm going to open this up, and we're going to, create this seating arrangement, or like whether it's furniture or the actual constructed space. But you can very much see how that is an area where her brain really thrives. And similarly, the unlimited potential with like the color palettes of the room. And so those two things sort of you can see they dovetail together, because it's this idea of like unlimited potential.
Yeah, I love it.
And my brain also kind of works like that too. We're sort of similar. And so just start to write those two different things out for yourself, because you want to really get to know yourself and just be honest about it. And there's so much liberation in that honesty. And again, if it feels scary, I totally get it. Like, you do not have to tell anyone about it, but just at the very least, like, know where you're at. And of course, we would be more than happy if you shared with us what your discoveries were. You can send us direct messages on Instagram. And we always want to hear what your ahas are and your light bulbs and stuff. But I know that this can be scary. And so I just want to encourage you to create a safe space for yourself. And then we'll also start to continue talking this through in layers. But we're starting with, this is the episode that's really about you.
Yeah, I think that once you identify those pieces and are really, I think that the self-honesty, like that's it's so hard sometimes to be honest with ourselves. And I know that it is scary, and that's usually what the resistance is around. And so maybe even like giving yourself some parameters, like I'm going to spend 10 minutes 5 minutes writing all this stuff down. And then when the 5 minutes are over, the 10 minutes is up, put down that pencil, shake it off, and go back to it a little later. See if there's anything left. Is there anything else that you needed to like get out that really didn't come in those first couple of attempts? And then you have a blueprint for who to hire. Because you're no longer doing those things in your business. Like at some point in the future, those will no longer be on your to-do list, right? Like, so there's like a little light at the end of the tunnel. You've been honest, and honest self-assessment is a beautiful thing. And then you can jump into like, what lights me up? What gives me energy in my business? I mean, I do know some people, and I get it, because like money, but like some designers really do like sending out those invoices. I'm not one of them, but I mean, I like getting money, don't get me wrong, but I'm not the person that like loves writing that email and hitting send.
I mean,
like
I find that probably 99% of the designers that I know, and myself included, do not like sending out the invoices. And I think the reason why is because
it taps, or two.
Yeah. There's maybe one or two, or maybe the ones who just charge $100,000 across the board for anything are like, send it.
Yeah.
But I think it triggers a deeper, I don't want to say insecurity, but I think there's this like, it's not ego, but it's like, it's something personal
I can tell
about your work, and then requesting money for it. It's maybe, I guess that's the worthy stuff.
Well, it's the starving artist syndrome, right?
Yeah.
It is. It's that. Like I could only get paid for this if I'm dead. Sort of like the idea behind. So if you're not sending out your own invoices, somebody else is doing it on your behalf. I mean, I was talking to the organizer who's doing the training for the team coming in, and she's like, it's so much easier to have someone else toot your own horn. Because I was like, I'm so terrible at social media. Like that's another thing I'm awful at. And part of that is like we, again, as women have been taught, like, don't get too big for your britches, little lady.
Yes.
Don't you go out there and brag about yourself, or people might think you got a big head. You know, like there's all these very clear sayings that men never get about confidence and self-promotion, but we as women get it fucking all the time. So I think that that's another thing. Like I don't love self-promotion. Like it's really hard for me. And similarly, like I think that's why invoicing is hard. It's because it's sort of like I'm requesting you to pay me, let's be frank, a lot of money for something that I did that I can't even remember taking me so long. And again, it's not about how many hours it takes. It's about the value that you're providing. So
yeah. And is it a lot of money? It actually isn't.
Maybe it's not, you know, so
because their house is increased exponentially in value. If you really thought about it, you could probably charge even more.
Yeah. And so I think that there's so many things tied up in all of these cultural messages that we can spend maybe a lifetime, and some of us have spent a lot of our lifetime unpacking so that we can move past them. But I think it's really helpful to be aware of like where you are finding the resistance. There's a belief under that resistance, and it's usually tied back to I'm not good enough. Or this idea of like, who am I to be this big and bright and whatever? And like, if you're a product of the universe or a child of God, if you prefer those words, like the universe created you to be something miraculous and incredible. And if you consider that it's your duty to shine and make an impact, you could let all the other things go. And I think that we have both discovered, quite honestly, recently, that is our goal in life, because that's what the divine decided for all of us. It's not just Julie and I, it's everyone. Like, we are meant to shine. We really,
and that's back to there's not one pie. There
Not one
is
pie.
you've got a pie. You've got a pie.
You've
your
got
own
a pie.
Everyone has
I
their
mean,
own pies.
Yeah. I think as many stars are in the constellations, there are opportunities and clients for every single one of us.
Yep.
And I think the key to getting the better clients is level up your skill set, increase your team so that you can support those bigger jobs, and there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, and you really want to think, and you want to think your mental energy. And I love what you were saying, Andy. It's almost like, because I was saying, write it all out, even like rant and get really negative and just go for it and do a brain dump. And it's almost like the funny way of looking at that is like, this is who I need to hire now.
Yes. Yes,
Which
it
is so
is. It's
funny.
who you need to hire.
But it's actually like, no, that's actually who you need to hire. That's actually really funny and awesome.
Yeah, it's your team
way
on
of looking
paper.
at it.
Totally. I love it. And then when you get to the point where you're acknowledging what you're really good at, and I think if you're going to be a business owner, you have to acknowledge that you're going to be good at some things, because you wouldn't have a business if you weren't good at some things. So it's
And
okay
I think
to
we
acknowledge.
need to talk a little bit more about the flip side, which is the actual specific zone of genius aspects. Like, how do I find it? How do I notice it? And we want to remind you that it's sparkling. It's similar to, like, I just took this like yoga retreat, and you like stretch your, you do the hip openers on the right side, and then we would stop, and then you notice the difference between the two sides of the body before you stretch out the other side. So this is a practice of noticing. And what was so great about that yoga retreat that was taught by one of my best friends, because she's an incredible teacher. So I was like, I knew I was in good hands. But it was almost she said it very intentionally, this slowing down. And so we would stretch one side, and then she would make us sit there in quiet and notice. She would, okay, now notice the difference. And as opposed to like, okay, now just do the other side. Right. So I really want to encourage all of us to notice, because your zone is sparkling around you, like I'm telling you, 24/7. And so if we notice, okay, now we notice what we don't like. Okay, now we're going to shift over into noticing what lights us up. So feel free to write it down. I love it when people write stuff down, because the more that I write and I put it on the page and become honest with myself about the way I'm thinking, I get a lot of clarity. But I know some people don't like writing, or maybe the writing is triggering or whatever it is. But start noticing. Like, let's see if I can use myself as an example. Like, I'm in a meeting, or I say something, and I just feel in my body this like light turns on. Like, I feel this like sparkle, and I'm like, yes. So start to pay attention. When are you really, actually, Andy, I think you sent it to us, and it was something about, I remember what it was. It's like this quote that Andy shared with us. It was like, resting is great. And of course we encourage you to rest always, because that's how we recharge, and it's super important. But the quote was talking about, but when you feel enthusiastic, excitement, all of a sudden rest is almost like not as important. And so that's actually the perfect like guidepost. That's the zone of genius. Thanks for listening and being part of our community. Speaking of community, please head over to our website and sign up for podcast alerts and blog posts. And if you're looking for more resources to up-level your business, create more time in your schedule, and improve your profits, we have a blueprint for your success that covers mindset, systems, business, teams, and tools. Think of us as your unaccredited university. Visit us at under-the-fringe.com and tune in next week for our next deep dive on creating more freedom and less struggle.